I know it's probably a wrong week for me to say that, but I need to be honest with my congregation. I can't say that I'm a huge fan of Taylor Swift. Not that I don't like her songs and texts. I really like them. I'm just not a fan. And I know many people, and just want to say thank you for choosing this synagogue and not Wembley Stadium tonight, for either joining us online or in person. And probably you can hear some of cheering from here as well. So let's make sure that the final song will be heard at Wembley Stadium in return. So, but I do wonder, because Taylor Swift is touring the world now, and she's repeating the same show over and over again. How many times? Some of you may probably know. Lots of times. And I do wonder whether one gets bored of repeating and performing the same over and over. Having said that, we just read prayers that we say every week, and some people say every day. So it's similar. But why am I saying it? Because there is a very curious repetition in this week's Torah portion. And this repetition is about 10 commandments. And one must ask, why do we need to repeat it? You said it once. I mean, we read it once in the book of Exodus, in chapter 20. Why do you need to repeat it again in the book of Deuteronomy? And an obvious answer is probably because now Moses is reminding people at the end of their journey, 40 years journey, about it. But there is a professor of Jewish religious thought at Hebrew Union College, or the person used to be a professor. Her name is Carol Ochs, I think. And she writes very moving reflection, very moving about it. She lists some differences, some different verses. So not only that we have repetition of 10 commandments, but we have different versions. They are not the same. They are mostly the same, but there are some phrases and sometimes sentences that are different. And she writes about it. The most significant difference, she says, that is between the two texts lies in the Israelites' own state of mind, not in the text. When the Israelites stand on the Mount Sinai in Exodus 19:20, they have successfully fled the Egyptians, crossed the Sea of Reeds, and been fed in the wilderness on manna. The danger is already behind them. But in Deuteronomy, the danger lies ahead. Of those hearing Moses' recitation of the commandments, this time almost none actually fled Egypt themselves. It's 40 years later. Now, precious few of them still have a living parent. Giants of their youth, Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, those who led them, are either dead or soon will be. In fact, this Torah portion begins with Moses pleading, asking God, please, can I enter the land? And God says no. The Israelites themselves, untested, will have to battle their way into the promised land in order to settle there. In Exodus, the Israelites are preoccupied with the present. In Deuteronomy, they are focused on the future. So it's not only the text is different, but also the context of where they are. And I think that's the bigger difference. And it's because of these differences in the reality of the Israelites that Moses changed some of the wording of the Ten Commandments. For example, in Exodus version, the reason for observing Shabbat, this is the biggest difference, by the way, in terms of the text. the reason for observing Shabbat is for the 6 days the Eternal One made heaven and earth and sea and all that is in them, and then rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Eternal One blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. And in Deuteronomy, remember that you were slave in Egypt, and your God, the Eternal One, freed you from there with a mighty hand and outstretched arm. Therefore, your God, the Eternal One, had commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. It cannot be more different, the reasoning. The Exodus version of the commandments is focused more on the wider plan, cosmic structure of the world, while Deuteronomy serves as a reminder of the past. In the book of Exodus, the first version, people have just been through the Exodus, so they are living witnesses of God's power. In Deuteronomy, they are the next generation, whose compass and reality is different. And it is this first explanation that I think means that when we realize the limits, imperfection, and mortality of our teachers, parents, and people we respect and admire, we look for something timeless. When your parent or teacher dies, it's impossible to find a new one, or it's impossible to find exactly the same. All you can do is to internalize it and play this role for yourself and others. At the same time, you need something that never disappears. Perhaps this is when religion and teaching and its teachings become useful. Religion can provide a message that is tested by time, by thousands of years of human existence. Therefore, it can become a source of support and wisdom, whatever happens. I would like to focus on just one idea, the concepts from this week's Torah portion that I think plays this role of a timeless reminder, of something timeless. So according to Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, there is only one thing as strong as death and mortality, and therefore it's timeless, and it is love. So this week marks a very special day in the Jewish calendar, the 15th day of the month Av, Tu B'Av. Many people only heard of the 9th of Av, the day of destruction, Tisha B'Av, the collective day of Jewish disasters. And not many people know that just a few days after, we celebrate the Jewish festival of love, Tu B'Av, the 15th day of the month of Av. Most Jews today hardly ever heard of this day. Tu B'Av was almost unnoticed in the Jewish calendar for many centuries. But it's been revived in recent years, and its modern version, Tu B'Av has become a Jewish version of Valentine's Day, but with a Jewish context. Perhaps the most famous quote, and this day is dedicated to not just expression of romantic love, but in uncovering what the concept or philosophical concept of love is. And this is what's brought me to discuss the following verse. So perhaps the most famous quote about love in Judaism comes from the first paragraph of Shema, also found in this week's Torah portion. It says, "Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha," and you shall love the Eternal One, your God. It's a commandment to love. It says that we are commanded to love God. It's not an advice. It doesn't say it would be nice. It says you have to, you must love. How can you command love? It's one of the hardest commandments that I find in Judaism. How can you make people love? According to Rashi, a medieval French Torah commentator, the main meaning of Shema And indeed, the entire Judaism is exactly that line. And you shall love. But in order to explain it, he contrasts love and fear as two opposites. In the commentary on this verse, he says, one should fulfill God's commands out of love. For one who acts out of love is not the same, is not like the one who acts out of fear. People who serve their master out of fear, if the master troubles them too much, they leave them and go away. So the first idea here that Rashi describes is that it's ultimately about people's actions, or using religious language about commandments. In other words, what we do is the true reflection of what we believe in. So he interprets, what does it mean to love God? It's to fulfill commandments, to act accordingly. It's very interesting, it's very rabbinic. You can never understand what people think, but you can always know what they do. And therefore, you should act accordingly. In other words, what we do is a true reflection of what we believe. There are two main motives for people to act: out of love and out of fear. To act out of love is to act positively, with understanding. To act out of fear is to avoid punishment. At some point, many countries, I think, go through it in the era of cars. So when there is a seatbelt law passed, at first, people act out of fear. People don't want to get fined, and therefore they fasten their seatbelts. But then, in time, the society grows into understanding that you do it to save lives, and therefore they do it. So the main purpose of religion, or any action, or indeed of any society, is not to create a conditional relationship based on punishment and fear. The true relationship must be based on agreement, acceptance and trust, understanding of its wisdom and values. True, lasting relationships are not based on might, strength, or power, but on mutual decision and trust. When we are commanded to love God, we are commanded to trust this world, to be religious in its pure way, its pure meaning, is to have deep belief that there is a good reason that every single person in this world exists. There is a good reason why history happens in the way it does, why things don't always play out the way we want. To love God, to be religious, is to have an unspoken agreement, trust and believe that everything around us has potential to make you and the world around you better. Shabbat Shalom.